welcome to an apple a day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. So hopefully you get a nice comfy seat, grab some tea, coffee, maybe an apple, maybe a treat. You're incredible, amazing. And I'm excited to share with you that this week we're on the topic of transformational leadership. And I am so delighted to have Sandra Joseph here with me. She has been a colleague of mine for over the years, and honestly, I've learned so much from her. And I'm so delighted to have her on to share about transformational leadership, since she impacts so many people. And so Sandra is currently a supervisor of special education at the secondary level at East Penn School District. And she was formerly the supervisor of special education at the elementary level through the Bethlehem Area School District. Sandra also is in her second year as a doctoral student at Delaware Valley University, and she's also getting the superintendent eligibility as well as educational leadership. So Sandra, I'm so excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to have you and to really discuss transformational leadership. So I'll just start with, what is transformation to you?
So transformation, I think it's different for everybody. It depends on how you look at it. So I think people transform personally. I think they transform professionally, and just, all those things together just impact who you are as a person, what you currently appear as. It could also be your appearance, and it also could just be how you interact with people, your actions. So all those things together, really, you are a transforming person, especially in the field of education that's ongoingly changing.
Great. So I like how you said that it's an ongoing journey for transformation. And again, we're constantly learning. So I really love how you really discussed a lot of that information, and really that transformation does take time. So, and I like also how you pointed out, which I also agree, that transformation takes time and it does look different for each person. Right. And so looking at transformation, what are ways that you have experienced transformational leadership, and how has it changed an environment?
So transformation, I think it's all a matter of how you start it. Whenever you're going into something, whether it's a new environment or a new relationship, just being able to take in your surroundings, take the time to listen, what the vision and the goals are for the relationship, whether it's your personal relationship, whether it's your professional relationship within an organization. And that key is listen. So really just kind of survey things, tend to listen more and talk less, is that old saying, at first, which can often be difficult when you're in constant meetings and things, but really just sitting back and be an observer. That's going to help you understand how comfortable the people are in receiving your transformation and what they want from you as a transformation. So how it might impact an organization was the second part. I think, again, it comes to what the goals are and what your vision is alongside of your colleagues and your family too. I look at life is transforming professionally and personally. So those things kind of have to be in balance with how you move forward in life, what people want to see, and also keep in balance what your experiences are, to try to come together and bring out the best in something by trying to bring forward some of the experiences you have to help others, but also listening to what their expectations are. So it is kind of like a fine balance of all of those things. There's lots of balls juggling when you're transforming, especially in an administrative leadership position. Just kind of coming in and dump trucking things is definitely not how it works. It could be it's hard to be received that way. So it's a fine line, but just being approachable through all of your transformation and having people, as you listen through it, join along with you. It's a kind of a work in progress together.
I like how you really talked, Sandra, about transformation, that listening piece, and really listening and observing, and hearing what do the other people come in with, right? Being observant, understanding and hearing them, and that really helps to build that trust. And I also like how you talked about, you're not, as a leader, coming in and just dumping everything on the table, right? You're really listening and hearing, what does everybody have to say? and also bringing your transformation, your ability to do that, right? And continue to grow in that area so that people feel heard and seen. So I really like how you said that. And I know you do that really well, just putting that in there, just knowing you. And again, really also, you talked about just bringing in your experiences, but also being able to say, like, what are their expectations? What are some of the things I'm bringing to the table, and then being able to merge all of that. So I really like that picture. And I think that's a great picture of like that transformational leadership and having patience in that process. So thank you. And then I know you talked about transformational leadership, but is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of what transformational leadership means to you?
Sure. So it's bringing along a team. Transformational leadership, along with you own professionally developing through your career and just seeking to understand new things and transforming with the expectations of what's coming from the state or what's within the district, what your own team needs. Those are very important things to incorporate all together within yourself, and finding what are the tools and just being willing and able to find how to do it. Transforming ourselves is, you're growing, but also bringing along that team to help grow with you. So, my old saying is, I don't want to appear at the table like I know everything. It has to be where you're empowering people. So transformational leadership is really a huge piece of it, is empowering people. Finding those diamonds in the rough is my old saying too. There are so many great, amazing people out there, and certainly have a lot of experiences in their own professional and personal lives to bring to the table along with you. So for me, transformational leadership has been really powerful when I have people along that are willing to contribute all their passion and their experiences too. So it actually enriches my life as well, and it enriches the team's life. Ultimately, it enriches the staff and the students' lives all together. So it is that team approach to help lead that transformation. It's all encompassing, and empowering those people that may not have been considered before as leaders within, even if they're staying as teachers. Even looking, I thought about this when this topic came as an option. I thought, we often have to consider our students as transforming. So, here we're talking about ourselves and we're transformational leaders, but, through some of my doctoral work, which has been a great experience, it's been a hard road so far, a great one, but a lot of reading. And some of the reading is, how are we empowering our kids? So, I'm probably jumping into another topic that you want to talk about, but like this whole COVID and school closures, it has shifted how we teach, and looking at how we're making our students be more empowered and more engaged. And what does that look like? How do we get them to be more independent, real life learners, very different from traditional learning, which we've been used to doing. So all of these things, again, are juggling within becoming a better transformational leader for myself. How do we make our teachers better transformational experts in doing all this, and ultimately our students, because, in the field of education, it's all about the kids. Those things encompassing one another is very important.
Great. And I love, we'll talk on a couple of things that you mentioned, but first I just want to say, I really love how you talked about your understanding of transformational leadership. What that means to you is that the team grows together, right? That you bring the team, and it's not like you're pulling the team, but the team's coming along together and transforming together, going through some of those really, easier things and some hard things, right? And I love how you said you don't have all the answers all the time, right? Or you're learning too. So everybody's coming and they're all bringing their own parts and pieces. And I love how you said you encompass and you really empower, the staff, and that's a really, really critical piece, right? Because you're wanting to empower and give voice to those people who maybe don't get a voice, right? Not everybody has, everybody has different personalities, and sometimes people are overlooked, or people might say, no, that person couldn't do it. But you see, like you said, like you look for that gold, right? You look for what's in that person. How can I bring it out, right? Because everybody has that in them. So I love how you talked about that. And I also love how you talked about, not just your teachers, but like, especially your students, right? We really want to empower our students and help them be empowered younger ages, and know they have a voice, right? And that they have different skills within them. So I really love how you also focused on that as well, right? Which is a great vision to have in transformational leadership. And then, just thinking about your last part, which kind of goes into a different question, is when you talked about, COVID and the different ways that we're looking at teaching and engaging our students. Obviously there's a lot of mental health concerns, just even beforehand. I know there's been a lot in different districts as well as, your district, looking at how can we help our students and look at mental health. And obviously with the pandemic, it really brings a lot of different stress or different factors in there. And so again, I'm just curious, like for you, as a leader, have you noticed with that switch, and engaging students, more compassion or a different approach since teachers and everybody's in the same boat? I'm just curious, like in terms of transformational leader, if you've noticed that being a shift, in perhaps education or how, the team's moving. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Organizationally, as we transform just the expectations, hopefully for short term, but it could be there are some things that are coming out of this also that may be potential to grow our programs in a different manner, depending on how our students are responding to it. It's all going to be how they're responding to it. So, as we transform our educational expectations, our teachers also, they have, honestly, I have to say, I've been blessed with, yes, there are some strong emotions with, why this is happening and how is this happening, but that's part of, the mental health piece of the change came so quick and it came so unexpected. And so we quickly had to create something and transform everything we've done in a limited to very minimal amount of time. So the pressures were great. The pressures were high. But our families and our teachers and our students really stepped up to, they were very forgiving and understanding of the situation because none of us had control over it. It was an open door to start a different dialogue. Interestingly, it created some challenges with how we're approaching our lessons, but it also opened the door to, could we do this different? And how could we do this different? And in the future, taking what did work and maybe growing that again, just saying, okay, this is how they responded. Could we keep this going? So it was, for me, I'm a day-to-day, minute-by-minute learner. This is exciting as we're growing in education, but it's also a little scary, because we weren't set up for it at first. However, as a transformational leader, we're taking the initiatives and just trying to be as positive as we can with how it needs to be shared with our staff, but also giving them that I'm approachable, come to me, let's work through things that are challenges. And also the same goes for our families. So as the families are struggling or expressing concerns, how can we meet and work through this? And that's been well received. Like I've been receiving a lot of great updates from our staff and our families. So as we move through this, hoping that it stays at a place where we're continuing to be as positive as we are and taking the good from the challenges.
That's great. And I love that you really talked about, this having some challenges, but really being able to hear families, almost like that empowering of how can we shift as a community? And yes, here's some great things that we've been doing and like we never thought about this, right? But that openness to say, well, maybe we can have something different in the future and, giving time for it, right? Because it takes time for change. And I know we'll talk about that. But I do love hearing that, again, what a great staff, going through it together. And I feel like that's what happened with a lot of staff, or different places, not necessarily in school, but we ended up having what I love about, I don't love COVID, I don't love pandemics, but what happens then is that every single human being, right, almost around globally, had the same type of experience, right? Maybe some were not as nervous, some weren't as scared, but everybody had related to one thing, right? And when everybody can relate, even if it's a little different, it helps, right? Because not one person could say, oh, I have no understanding of this, right? We were all in the same boat or pretty much all in our houses, And so I think that also helps, when you're moving forward, because everybody sort of does have more empathy and compassion, in it because they all experience it. So that's great. So then thinking about, have you always been a transformational leader? And if not, what made you shift to become one?
That comes with maturity and experience. Anyone in education goes into it knowing that there's going to be changes. So, when I think about the journey, starting as a special education teacher, and then moving into administration. Anytime working with people, the willingness to transform comes from just understanding and seeing how people respond. So again, if coming in expecting everything to be solved all at once, or that one person knows all the answers, is not the best approach, but more that all the people around the table joining in together to share it and being very collaborative is the key. So as you know me for many years, I love to talk. I'm very social, and that is probably how I run most of my meetings, if not all, because it really needs to be where everybody is valued and having a purpose in being there together. So to transform anything into something great, that's empowering. Again, getting back to that empowering of people and listening and just developing things together, because, of course you can just put this great idea down, but if people aren't attached to it, there isn't the buy-in, right? So even with the unfortunate situation with the COVID, or what we're going through with, the equity and the inclusiveness, and all of these are great challenges that education is facing and our world is facing. However, as long as the approach is friendly and I want to hear what you have to say and I'm going to value what you have to say, I think anyone is going to feel like they're a contributor and great things will come out of that. So for me, it's honestly been, I go into every meeting without an expectation in the end. Really, you have to go in without this firm expectation that this is how it's going to be, because that isn't ever how it's going to be. It's just all evolving. And that's the word I've been using this year with staff is, you're going to hear me say it 1,000 times, we're evolving. Yeah. And that's how we transform and we support one another. It's just being empathetic. That word that you use is a key word. So those two E words are very empathetic and empowering and evolving.
Good. And I like, you said collaboration is key. I think that was really important. And also the empowerment is key. And you said those 3 E's, really: empowerment, empathy, right? And not having expectations. I think I had them, but you have 3, right? Like that were important. And then really, again, bringing people in, like you said, and talking and having conversation or connecting. Because I think one thing, even for leadership, again, people are always like, well, leadership can be lonely. It may, but I don't know if you agree. Like a lot of times it may just be that, we need each other, so even at the leadership level, it's like connecting with other people, and like you said, talking with people at the table and having those conversations. And I think with you being able to, again, in that maturity, as you mature with that, hearing other people, talking with other people, even if it's something that, again, you're just navigating, or there's, there may be different thinking about it, but just being able to hear somebody and say, I value you, right? And that takes time and maturity, and I definitely over the years have learned how to do that, right? And so it takes time, and we're not gonna be perfect and we keep learning. So I love how you talked about being able to hear other people, making sure they feel valued, and that importance of that empathy. So again, those are really good points.
And if I could follow up with one, you made me think of something to add to that. Getting back to your original question, which was I always like that? Yeah. And the reason why I tied the word maturity in there is because I don't know that any of us are, when you first start, good at all of those things of listening, empowering, just being empathetic. And I think a lot of people are used to, or they think their job is to come in with a set plan, and this is my job, is to present this plan, and this is what it's going to be, and we're going to do this. But when you ask the question, have I always been? I haven't, because that's what you think coming out as a special education teacher or a teacher, is to go in with this plan because you are the teacher, right? So you're supposed to design it. However, you learn through trial and error, which, yeah, you could find, I probably had some meetings where I did that. And, you learn quickly that isn't the way people want to be treated. You have to learn it isn't your expectation. And if that is your organization's expectation and it's not your comfort level, then perhaps it's not the place for you. And that's kind of where, you shift in your maturity and your experiences.
Yeah, no, that's really important. Thank you for adding that because again, like you said, it takes some maturity and we're not always there, right? We're learning over time, like you said, through experiences. And maybe having the idea of, yeah, like when I come in, like this is like a vision, or these are some ideas, then hearing what other people have to say, or maybe other people may be in a different place, right, with that journey. So it's kind of like hearing everybody. And I just am curious, just because I know with, transformational leadership, again, there's different leadership styles, right? And when you want to empower everybody, there's like democratic, right? We can have different kinds and you want to hear everybody. Do you find it harder then? Like once you talk to everybody and you hear them, then you have to still make a decision that again, you still heard everybody, but sometimes you make a decision that not everybody, right, is able to, like they may have some more conversations or that's really not a buy-in. Like, do you find that happens even as you as a leader, are listening, but sometimes you still have to make decisions? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a great question. So of course, and I think that's the tricky part of being in administration, but that's that key, the word approach. And you may not know your staff all 100% well, or maybe ever know them 100% well, but just knowing their beliefs is probably how you can approach that conversation when you know they're probably not going to buy in. But if you're able to understand maybe what they're vulnerable about, maybe what they've been hurt for in the past about, or troubled with, or maybe sometimes it's just their experience that they're not sure they can do this. So it comes from a couple different places, and being a transformational leader, just being able to identify where they're coming from and why they're resisting is how you can help them get over that barrier. Essentially, everyone will get over that barrier. It's a matter of the time, what resources people need to help get through some of their challenges with maybe what the team is deciding. That's you're right. It's a great follow up because not everyone is going to sit around the table and agree 100%. It's presenting that information and just hearing where it's coming from and why it's really hard to do, and how, if they're not able to transform, how could I help you transform? And just for them knowing that the door isn't going to be closed, the door is going to be open because we need to continue having that dialogue.
That's good. Yeah, I think, having those conversations and again, also like I'm sure for you, like, accepting, okay, like we're going to have ongoing conversations and knowing that sometimes it may not, there may be ongoing conversations, but there's still not, that buy-in may take time or it may not necessarily come around, or it might take some time, but also being open, like you said, being willing, hearing where they're coming from, talking with them and valuing their time. And I think that is important, right? We may have different understanding or perspectives, right? But it doesn't mean we can't honor and respect each other, right? It doesn't mean that we can't, really get along, even if we have, completely different understandings, right? It's just a way to say, I'm open to it. And hopefully the other person is, right? Not always, they're not always open to it, but right. But that's kind of like what you talked about with transformation, like us constantly evolving and saying, okay, and I don't know if you agree, but I tend to do a lot of self-reflection. And so like constantly saying, okay, how can I continue to evolve? I like that word you said, evolve. And how can I continue to transform, right? And make sure I'm listening and hear the other person, but also understand and accept that sometimes, that may come around or sometimes the other person's not there, but I'm going to continue, right, to transform and continue to offer that open door.
Yeah, I love that word reflection because it is a key thing. And sometimes people reflect too much. And I could probably be guilty of that because we're always trying to find, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how are we going to move through? And that is huge in as far as transforming in a positive way, because I know there's ways that you can transform in maybe a negative way and letting something impact you to it's not being a positive reaction. However, if we're always thinking about it, how can we support ourselves and what did I do and how could I fix that, or how can I even be better in the future, and be willing to do that, I think when your staff sees it too, that's also how you're going to transform the team to be even more powerful than what it was before.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like the evolving and even modeling how you do self-reflection, right? Or saying that. And I think, sometimes people don't always do that, but you do, you'll talk about things. But I feel like even the one time I remember, even as I was like starting out, even with training, I had a question. I remember you saying, it's okay if you have the answer later. And I was like, oh, good. I have permission. And, as you evolve, you're able to say, okay, this is where I'm learning or I'm still growing. I can ask somebody else, and I think that's important because if we model, we're still working through something, right? Or, okay, like maybe we'll go this way. I think that does help other people see it's okay to express yourself, and also say, let me reflect and see what went really well and what didn't, but also not to dwell on it. Like you said, like there's healthy reflection, then there's times to continue forward. So I think that's a really wise discussion, like how to reflect, but then move forward. And I think that's good. Thinking about transformational leadership, and I know you might have talked about some lessons you learned, but is there any one lesson that stands out with you about what you learned about transformational leadership?
Yeah, there are some really hidden, amazing people that I loving to be able to find them and to work along with you, because again, trying to do it alone is really hard. It's big work. It's a heavy lift. A lot of the things that we're doing now is heavy work. It's hard work, and you envision that boulder and one person pushing it up the hill versus that boulder and there's multiple people. So that old saying, many hands make lighter work. It's the truth. As we transform in what we do, having our people feeling like, yeah, she believes in me and we can do this together and bring out the best. I'm always looking for that, to not do it alone.
Yeah, I like that. Really, you just mentioned, just don't do it alone, work together. It's hard work, but if you have a lot more hands, right, the boulder will move a little easier than just you trying to do it by yourself. That's really good. And then looking at mentoring people, I know you walk in that transformational leadership and empowerment. Have you mentored other people to be empowered and really transformational leaders?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite roles was when I became a mentor for somebody as their first year teaching, and they became part of our team, and working with them closely and helping them through, the first year challenges of just, figuring out where things are and what to do. That was my favorite thing. And I'm still she is one of the super learning support teachers I've ever met. And then when I started seeing her just have this passion towards the more challenging students and having that Teflon coat, I call it, and being able to let things slide, not take things personally, I saw a lot of great qualities that were unique to becoming a future emotional support teacher. And then she stepped into that role and did an amazing job. She even switched levels from a high school level to an elementary level, and then went from that to getting her BCBA. So watching her, to me, even though she's not in administration, watching her grow from a brand new teacher first year into something that is impacting and changing children's lives and families' lives, for me, that was making her a leader and transforming through her experience. And I loved watching it. And I love still talking to her and seeing how things are going. And that's the most powerful thing, when you bring out the best in someone and their job becomes better for themselves and everyone else, because they're great at what they do and they love what they do.
That's great. Yeah. And I love that you were able to impact her and see her flourish, but bring out the best in her. And then they end up bringing the best out in others. I think that really helps shift an environment, right? When we can empower other people, right? And we continue to learn, how do we bring out that gold, and I think that's amazing that you're still impacted by that, when you had your first mentor, but then you also kind of knew, well, this is what I want to do, right? Like, this is who I am. And it probably empowered you, because anytime we're doing something and it's just almost natural, right, to do, like in our a gifting and stuff, that's hopefully a big part of that leadership that I think it takes some time sometimes for people to learn, just that empowerment. But again, it is a journey, but when it comes a little bit more naturally, it helps, even before you're in a leadership role, you really were in a leadership role. So that's great. And then just thinking about books and resources, do you have any recommended books and resources that you want to share with the audience?
Yes. It's a simple read. I will caution you, because, with a lot of reading that we're doing through our doctoral work, I have this fun book. I don't know if you've read it. Have you read this?
I've heard of it. I think I've heard of it. I have not read it yet. It's on my list though. It's on my resource list now.
So it's Who Moved My Cheese by Sandra Joseph. And the reason why I wanted to share that book with you is because our district went through a large inclusion initiative last year and just hadn't revisited the practices that we were implementing for some period of time. So looking at very seasoned teachers and very seasoned practices, this was a good book to read and help understand like the different groups. So honestly, it really does apply across your life. It could be your personal life, your professional life, and organization's life. And what I liked was I was able to use some of the silly quotes that they had in there, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. And it's an easy read, so teachers were able to read it and just talk about their challenges with change, how we were going through and looking at equitable practices for our students with special needs, working, what's not working. So I also think it's funny because you can also find people in your lives professionally and personally that are each of the characters. So there are some really cute characters in there, and then it starts to come to life for you, which is really nice. So
great. Well, I like that. And I like, any type of simple or practical way to help you understand, right? The different ways. So I definitely have that on my list. And that resource, just for the audience, will be listed first on the YouTube description as well as the podcast description. So you can certainly check that out in the near future. And then again, Sandra, I'm not sure, just in the event that anybody wanted to get in touch with you, sometimes I always ask if you're willing, if there's some way to get in touch with you that you're comfortable with. Obviously you gave that resource, but if there was somebody like, yeah, I just sort of really was touched by what you talked about, do you have any place that they could contact you?
Sure. If you want to drop my work email address in there, that would probably be the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay. So we'll do that for anybody out there. And then finally, again, I really appreciate our conversation. I think it was really helpful. A lot of things that stood out were the ease, evolving, empathy, and oh yeah, that was it, evolve, not the no expectations, that's okay, but evolve, empathy, and empower.
Yeah.
And those are really, huge things that you talked about in terms of transformational leadership. But for the audience, I just want them to have one takeaway. Really, I always say one wisdom tip. So what's your final wisdom tip? It could be a word, a phrase, or something that you want them to take away, really to encapsulate everything we talked about.
So I think about transformation and just being open to it and finding what you love to do in life and start to just do it and find that you're open to being relaxed through the process. And the hard part is not everyone's good with change. So the transformation is just being the reflective piece of where you stand on that scale. Are you real comfortable with it? Are you not? And what are the things that can help you? And honestly, this book is hilarious when you start reading it. That's why it helps you understand who you are as a person and the character. Mm-hmm. And then also relating to others, because the big piece of it as a transformational leader, whether you're a teacher or whether you're an administrator, is understanding others. Mm-hmm. And knowing how their behavior and beliefs can affect how responsive things can be when it comes to change. So, and that can really make you happy or not. So, as a leader within your classroom or as an administrator. So yeah, just do it what you like, make yourself happy doing it, and find the things that you need and ask for help. It's okay.
That's great. I love that. Do what you love, ask for help. And, again, as you were talking with like that constant evolving, right? Like just always seeing, and I don't know about your journey, but like seeing where have I been, right? So even if you're reading that book, it might be like, oh, I can relate to different characters, right, over time, or constantly having that evolving. So I really love that. So again, audience, there's a lot of wisdom. I always say there's a daily dose, but there's a lot of spoonfuls of our wisdom from Sandra. So Sandra, I appreciate you being on today. And again, audience, this week I've been talking about, having our guests talk about transformational leadership, Sandra talking about education and how that has impacted her life, and how she's evolved and impacted people. And then talking this week after our interview with Sandra tomorrow, just really reflecting on what were those big tips about transformational leadership, because I always like to think about what have we talked about, and then what does that mean moving forward. And so hopefully if you're out there, be encouraged, maybe you're on your journey for learning how to be a transformational leader. Maybe you're just curious and trying to figure out what kind of a leader you are, or maybe you're just trying to like learn some tips for you in growing. So hopefully this encourages you to continue to grow and be kind to yourself, as you're growing. And so again, audience, you're incredible and amazing. I hope you have a great week. Always know that there's hope. Always know that it's just one step at a time. And so again, Sandra, thanks for being here. Love you, audience, and I hope you have a great week. So take care and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.